I actually have the words on my screen that says going live. So there we are. Hey, Team Healthy. Hope you guys are doing well today. I'm really looking forward to our time here today. I want to let you know, and we're going to be talking today. We have a lot of questions that would go under the category of narcissists only hear what they want, and boy, do we have what questions that go along with this. I want to start today by letting you know I've been blown away the last couple of days. Monday, I uploaded a video about um, being trauma bonded to others and how to come out of that and what it does to a person. And then I read a lot of the quotes that I've received from people, and I have some more things that I'm holding back on that I'm gonna read in other videos coming down the road. The response to that's been overwhelming. The comments that you've been making about how many of you are in fact stuck in trauma bonds, or you're coming out of it, and my heart goes out with you. I want to read a comment, okay, from one of our listeners from Australia. So Susan, here it comes. She probably didn't know that it's coming, but she's one of our regulars. Susan says, this video was like a big warm verbal hug from you. And it was. It was my way of letting it be known. I see it. I know it. I understand what it is. I wish I could make it go away. And then it says the comments you read showed the harrowing pain of loving someone who only deeply loves themselves, and how they grind their emotional heels into to you until compliance is obtained. What a tragic exploitation of love and loyalty. And that line, what a tragic exploitation of love and loyalty. Narcissists do not get it. And many times, and I mentioned in the video the malignants, and some of you said, well, what about the coverts? Well, coverts can be malignant too. But there are times when some of them can go on so strong, and it's wrong. So here's the request that I'm going to make, and we're going to pick up on this next Wednesday when I do my next live feed, and that is I'm wondering if you could write comments, whether it's here on the chat section on our live, but especially in the comment section below the video once it goes up. Uh, Give me some comments about what you've learned about how to move forward from a narcissist mistreatment, and I want to put a whole lot of the comments up next week. We're going to talk about it in our live feed. So, if you will, I want you to be thinking, what is it that you've been able to do, and what kind of mindset and shift and adjustment have you been able to make that allow you to move forward from a narcissist mistreatment? Okay, and we're going to hear from a lot of you, and I'm going to put that up in our feed next week, and we're going to make it a very special session next week. Now, today we have there's another one of our regular viewers, Patty, who just sent this comment in that says narcissists only hear what they want. We have I have a team that works with me on my marketing and all like that, and Michelle is the one that I work most closely with. As soon as I read this one, and then I picked up on the questions that were coming in, I sent her the title that I wanted to use, and it's like, Michelle, I've got the perfect title: Narcissists only hear what they want. I'm going to go into some questions here that have been sent in, but I want to give you an illustration. Okay, my wife is trained. Jennifer is trained as an opera singer. Now she wound up spending her entire career teaching junior high kids choir, and you can't pay those people enough to do what she had to do. But she has this beautiful, incredible voice, and she's very well coached. She has her master's degree in voice and all. And there was a time when our daughter who's now in her 30s, when she was a teenager, a kid that was in her class in high school wanted to get some voice lessons because he wanted to get into the lead for the school musical. He wanted to try out for that. So he thought, yeah, I need some lessons just to get in there because I know I'm going to make it. So he came to our living room, and our daughter and I were in the kitchen. And as soon as my wife started vocalizing him, wanted to warm him up and all like that, and then get into the song that he wanted to use, we were astonished. It's like he just picked one note, and he parked on it. And my wife was trying to get him to go up and down the scales, and then as they got into the song, it was like, and it's like, no, let's go up and down and let's do the song. It's like, and it was awful. It was terrible. And he honestly thought he nailed it. That's how clueless the fellow was. He was tone deaf. And my daughter and I, we were trying our best to be, not rude. And we were in the kitchen. He didn't see us, but it's like we were in there just shaking our head and bug eyed and all of this. He honestly thinks he's going to be the lead singer. And he wasn't, by the way. Okay, I give you that as a silly illustration. How many of you have been with a person and it's not singing or music that they're trying to make, but it's relationships that they're trying to manage? And as they come at you, it's like, ooh, this person is tone deaf. They don't get it. And they have so many different ways, just like that fella in our living room that didn't know how to do the basic scales. They have so many ways of illustrating. They only hear what they want to hear. And in doing so, they completely miss the basics in healthy relationships. Now, here are some questions that we have. And Patty, thank you for passing this title along. The first person says or asks the question, can I help my husband realize that he has narcissistic issues? I'm so spent trying to have empathy toward him. Okay, so here you have this woman who's thinking, well, if I can show understanding, I'll be the standard bearer. I'll illustrate what understanding looks like. Okay, if I can let him know that his feelings and his needs matter, I'm willing to go into that space. And so you have this person that's really trying hard to have the right kind of skills, and the husband just keeps coming back with and just can't match pitch. Um, can I help my husband realize that he has narcissistic issues? And many of them are so completely oblivious that the fact that you ask the question of him over and over and over, can you do better? Or I want you to work with me, and he just can't and won't. And you give him the right illustration. There's an ingredient that we refer to as compassion fatigue. And people in my profession have to be careful about that, or anytime you're in the helping profession. But also, if you're just one of those kind and friendly and good and giving kind of souls, compassion fatigue means that you work so hard to be helpful and kind and appropriate with other individuals, and you don't get anything coming back. And there's some people that they just will take advantage of your good nature, and that's what this woman is actually experiencing. He's only going to hear what he wants to hear. And so at some point, no matter how kind or good or uplifting your intentions are, sometimes you have to realize, okay, message received. This person isn't wanting to buy my wares. I need to move on to something else. Now, and so how can I make my husband realize that he has narcissistic issues? You don't. You need to realize it. But if he says, I'm doing just fine, just like that kid thinking he's going to have the lead in the school play, well, he may think he's doing fine. But if that's the case, rather than trying to drag him along or push that rope uphill, another analogy, you need to move on and say, okay, I know I'm dealing with somebody who's dense, and I need to be with people who understand what I have to bring and can appreciate it. Now, another question, and this one's a little bit more blunt. This first one is more of a passivity, let's call it. But the next one is, what is a good response to the narcissist who says, I don't want to hear it, when you give your boundaries to that person? So here you have someone, you're trying to say, this doesn't work for me, or this is something that I intend to do, or these are my priorities. And I know you have different priorities for me, but these are my priorities anyway. And so they say, well, I don't want to hear it. What do you say to something like that? Well, let's first start with the response. What's the worst way that you can respond to that? Okay, you probably know what it is. Try to convince them how appropriate you are. Hey, look, the reason I'm saying this, how many times when a person says, I don't want to hear it, do you then come back and say, well, let me explain to you why you need to hear what I have to say? Do you ever fall into that trap? And then how frequently do they come back and say, wow, that's a game changer? Man, I thank you so much for your input. They won't do it. Instead, when you are establishing your boundaries, and I'm making the presumption that probably you need to establish your boundaries because that person tends to walk all over it in the first place, and they say, "I don't want to hear it." What's a good response? How about if you say something like, "I'm aware of that," and you don't argue. It's like when they say, "I don't want to hear what you have to say." Yes, I know. And then the next comment can be, "Nonetheless, I've made my decision," and you move on. And notice my tone of voice, the mannerism. It's like I'm not going to waste unnecessary anger and agitation and pleading and coercion on somebody who says, "I don't want to hear it." Yeah, I know. You've made yourself clear. And basically it's like, well, then those are the facts that we're dealing with. It's not what I want to know or want to hear, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with what I know is wisest and best anyway. No coercion, no pleading, no convincing, but I am going to stay true to me. And sometimes I think we feel like there's something amiss when we have to move forward without that narcissist approval or coordination. And actually, there is something amiss, but it's not anything that you generated. And so you just continue to move on without having to convince that person that you are indeed a good person. My question is, do you know that you're a good person? Yes. Do you know that your priorities are reasonable? Yes. Proceed. And if they are they going to be mad? Yes. Do they get mad at pretty much anything? Yes. Proceed. Okay. Um, this person is this next question. Last week I read a question that had something to do with a narcissist apology. You know what I'm talking about? Something to the effect, well, if I did do something to offend you, then I'm sorry, but here comes all the rest of the explanation. Um, this person's asking a follow-up question, so I thought, yeah, let's run with this one. Do I let the narcissist know that I know why he's apologizing? In other words, you're just apologizing just to get on my good side, or you're just apologizing for a temporary reprieve, or you're just apologizing because you're trying to shut me up, or because you got caught. I know what's going on with you. Do you say that when a person gives that insincere apology? And that's an option. You can go ahead and say it. And sometimes you do need to say that, if for no other reason, just to hear yourself say it. So that's not exactly wrong. But then the next comment, the next thought I have is, if you say, "I know the reason you're apologizing is for insincere reasons," A, they're going to go into denial. No, that's not the case. And then B, they're going to invalidate you. See, you're always just argumentative. And so I don't know that I would say much, but sometimes you may need to hear yourself say that. But if they give a non-apology apology, um, how about if you give a response such as this? It's clear that we're on very different wavelengths, and I don't think we see eye to eye on this. And then when they say, "Well, I'm just trying to be nice. I'm trying to let you know," I realize that's where you're coming from. We're not on the same page, and there might be a time when you just need to say something like that. And I've known plenty of situations, whether it's in extended family situations or at work or inside your marriage or even with your teenagers. It's a variation of that nonetheless approach that I talk about. Well, nonetheless, here's the decision I've made, or this is where I'm going anyway. And at some point, you have to ask, how badly do I need that narcissist affirmation? Yeah. Or how badly do I need to have that narcissist apology or acknowledgement that they've been inappropriate? And well, if you're going to have well coordinated relationships, those kinds of things really do matter. But I guess it means that in order for you to take their non apology and say, it looks like we just don't see things eye to eye, in addition to that, you're also acknowledging within yourself, this is not a relationship that has depth. I'm going to proceed with that recognition in mind. Okay. And so I think sometimes we work so hard to try to bring that narcissist who will not hear what you have to say. They just only want to hear what they want to hear. We work so hard to try to bring them into normalcy or bring them into common sense. And they won't say this out loud, But in essence, their behavior is saying, no, I don't do common sense. I do dominance. I do selfishness. I do control. I do no empathy. Common sense, no, that's not on the radar. And it's like, okay, I get it. I see where you're coming from. And at some point, it's like my influence is limited. And it sounds a bit negative to say this, but what I tell folks is with certain people, you have to build in a given amount of pessimism. There are some individuals that no matter how hard you try or well intended you are, it's not going to work out well. And rather than thinking, well, maybe this is going to be the time, pessimism says, well, I've had about 162 episodes with this person before, and it hadn't exactly worked out splendidly in those 162. Is 163 going to be the time that I get my breakthrough? And so build in a certain amount of pessimism while at the same time you don't want to go into your place of darkness and all the rest. But there's just some people, it's like, okay, just like Patty gave with the comment that is the title for our live feed today. Narcissists only hear what they want to hear. It's exasperating. Okay. Now, this next question, it goes to the why. This person asks, why are narcissists so defensive? Why do they take everything defensive or feel as if they're being attacked? Well, that's a great question because there's a really deep answer. When I say deep, complex, a whole lot going on behind the scenes. Defensiveness, first and foremost, is the sign of a very insecure person. If someone comes along and says, Les Carter, I don't like the way you handled this situation. Well, that may not be my favorite thing that I want to hear, but I know myself well enough to know that I'm fallible, or I know humanity well enough to know that people have different perceptions or different interpretations. And so, could I be confident enough to say, okay, tell me what you need me to know, and I'll certainly give it strong consideration. That's a non defensive response, and it takes a certain amount of confidence or calmness or internal peace. Now, you'll notice narcissists are not at peace with themselves. They're not at peace with the world around them. They live with fear, they live with paranoia. It's like, you're out to get me, aren't you? You're trying to do me in, aren't you? And so when you come along and say, well, actually, I'm just thinking a little bit differently than you, then they can't deal with that because they have designated you, whether it's conscious on their part or subconscious, but they've designated you to be their supply. You're supposed to prop me up and make me feel good. And so if you come along and say something that is not in that genre where you're not propping me up right now, it's like you're not giving me what I seek. And they make the fundamental mistake of thinking that you do exist as a prop, which is their egotism, it's their entitlement. And then when they go into this defensiveness, the inevitable ingredient that goes along with that is their anger. They're very dysregulated with their anger. And they've never taken the time or have any kind of interest in knowing how to manage anger cleanly, because clean, healthy assertiveness, by the way, is reasonable. And but it requires a certain amount of self-restraint, and it's like, no, I don't have self-restraint. And so there's a whole host of issues going on inside. When you ask why are they being so defensive, it all comes from their sense of uncertainty about who they are and how to manage differentness, and ultimately it illustrates they're fear-based people. It's like your different thoughts threaten them, so they try to bring you back into their tight little script. I only want to hear what I want to hear. I've got this nice script that comes out with me as the hero, with me as the one who's in charge, with me as the one who tells everybody else what to do. Just stay with the script and we're going to get along just fine. And it's like, well, the more you grow and the more you stretch, it's like, I don't want to be on that script. And we can have a script that is mutually agreed upon or mutually written, and it can change over time. Why don't we do that? And that involves communication and listening and adjusting and rehearsing. And the narcissist like, no, I've already got it figured out. I'm in charge, period, end of discussion. And so their egotism doesn't let them receive you. And so they become defensive when you say, open up. It's like, no, I'm closed. Haven't you figured that out? And that's where we go back to building in a certain amount of pessimism. Now, the next one is somewhat of a similar kind of question. Does the narcissist really think that he's the only one for you in a relationship? He tells me what to do about anything and everything. So this person is more or less saying this narcissistic individual in my life has appointed himself as um, the chief thinker. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to explain to you, what for. I'm going to explain to you what you did wrong and what you need to do differently. And you'll notice that one of the guiding elements inside of a narcissist is uh, they make no room for diversity. It's like um, diverse personalities or interests or interpretations abound. Variety is built into all of nature. We don't want everything to look and be alike and have the same function. There is such enormous variety inside of nature, including human nature. We have all sorts of different personality styles and ways of responding. We have different backgrounds and life experiences and cultures, et cetera, to draw upon. And the narcissist has the arrogance, but that's not the right word. Has the narrow mindedness to think, look, if everybody can think like me, this would be a great world. And complexity confuses them. And by the way, I get a lot of comments on the channel about politics, and you'll notice that I don't take sides on all of that because that's not my function. I don't feel like I need to be a political commentator. But it is amazing how one side says, well, the good news is me and my party, and by the way, it doesn't matter if you're in America or Australia or England or India, me and my groupies, we think alike. And the other side says, well, no, me and my groupie, we think alike. And, politics, so much can be about power. They kind of forget it's about public service. Or, since we're talking about topics we're not supposed to talk about, politics, and then the next one's religion. Well, my religion, my way of looking at all that kind of stuff, it's the right way. And so when someone says, well, I have questions, or I have a different way of looking at things, or my tradition's not the same, or that doesn't make sense to me. It requires complexity. It implies complexity. And the narcissist thinks one thing, and that is conformity. Get inside, get over here, do what I say. And then if you don't, you're judged, or you're kicked out of the club, or you're told how awful you are, you're blamed. And it's a very immature way of looking at the world. And I'm going to be real honest. I've kind of, in my own personal life, I've kind of pulled back from worrying about changing the way the world is because as I read books in history, whether it's modern stuff or deeper history and going all the way back, this kind of stuff's been going on for millenniums. And when you look at it, there's always some dominant group that's wanting to dominate and tell the other person how it's supposed to be. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Just come along with my schemes. That systems are going to be like this. What I do want to concern myself with is individuals like you and like myself. It's like, well, maybe I can't change that big, huge system out there. But what I can do is in my little small sphere of influence, when someone brings their complexity or their diversity, my immediate thought can be, I'd like to be a bridge builder. I'd like to be somebody that knows what that person's heart is and who they are and how they feel. And so I'm willing to do that. And there are times when we can actually have victories, but it has to be in those smaller kind of things. People have said, hey, Dr. C, you need to run for president. And I'm thinking, nah, just go ahead and push me off a tall building instead. I wouldn't do that to save my life. It's just no appeal whatsoever to anything like that. So anyway, this next question, And I'm wondering how many of you have wondered, how much do I reveal about my personal self to certain individuals? This person says, excuse me. And by the way, uh, DRC mugs in our little bookstore thing. This person says, what should I do when the narcissist asks a personal question about myself? When I answer, the conversation leads to an argument. I'd rather say nothing, but that could make them angry. Is there anything that I can say instead? Okay, let's apply a little bit of Dr. C logic here. If I say something personal, then it leads to an argument. In other words, the anger shows up. If I don't say anything, that person gets angry. So what do I do? Well, in the case of that, it's like, well, that person's going to be angry either way. So rather than filtering everything through that angry person, why don't you listen to your gut? What does your gut tell you? Now, when you say the person asked about something personal about myself, and I know that they're going to get angry, it may be that no matter what I say, I'm going to be labeled as wrong. So why don't we just say something like, I know that you might have a curiosity, but that's not something I'd rather get into. So if they ask personal stuff, whether it's about your personal background or your reasoning for doing something or your convictions or your beliefs or whatever it might be, I'm one of these people that says I'd be more than happy to talk with you about who I am and what's going on inside of me, assuming that this is a safe atmosphere. But when you pick up on the notion that says, no, you're not a safe person at all, then when someone says, well, give me the personal scoop, I think it's okay just to listen to your gut and say, well, I'd rather not get into that. And when they say, why not? The answer is because that's the decision I've made. And they say, well, that sounds ridiculous. I'm aware of that. Well, you're just being real closed. We have our interpretations. In other words, I'm not going to get sucked in. It's called gray rock, by the way. And it means that you're drawing upon your peace. When I talk with you in my videos, I wish that for you to have a sense of peace. That's what I'm talking about. Be comfortable in your own skin and be comfortable with your own decency. And if someone comes along and says, well, I'm not comfortable with your decency or your presumed decency, maybe that's on them. And that's not a problem you can solve or you ought to solve. Okay. So hold firm on that one. Okay, this next one, and this is one, and you may have the thought, am I ever going to be able to get my life back on track or on track in the first place? This person says, I've realized that my family is a collection of narcissists, unfortunately. My family now are friends that I've chosen for myself. So you have your family by blood relations, and you have your family by selection, which I think is wonderful. I've thought recently about having a partner, but I'm now in my 50s. Have I missed the boat? Could you put this question out there next week, please? Well, here it is. Have you missed the boat? And it's like, okay, you're in your 50s. What are you going to do when you're in your 60s and 70s and beyond? You may have heard me say before, your best thinking in life doesn't even happen until you hit at least 40. You've had at least a couple of decades of adult living, and some of that idealism or some of the naivete that you may have grown up with has been shattered. And if used properly, you can look at your experiences and ask, what are the learning points that I can take out of that? You're in your 50s, and I'm thinking, well, you've already found a group of people that you can connect with that are family by choice. Um, and is it possible that you could find a partner that would be even more of that have you the inner circle kind of person? You're familiar with the 7 concentric circles of friends. Level 1 is those people that are on that very intimate circle with you, and there's only room for a certain number there. Level 2, you know them pretty well. Level 3, you have good engagements with them. Level 7 is what we refer to as your familiar strangers. So can I expect that maybe I could bring in someone new to my level 1 relationships? And my answer is sure you can. In fact, it may be that you'll have even more to draw upon. Now, having said that, you want to make sure that that person also has done a lot of soul searching and who am I and where am I going and what do I believe and how do I handle complexities and things like that. And you know that I have my courses and I have these videos. All of this is meant to challenge and stimulate you to ask those why questions. And so I want you to be a lifelong learner. So have you missed the boat? No. If anything, it may very well be that whoever that person would be can be very lucky. Okay. And just as an aside, this a few years ago, I had there's a lady, and then I got to know her new husband. They got married at age 70. And I mean, one of the most delightful people that you could possibly know this woman was. And then the husband that she married, she'd gone through an awful divorce and all. And so we had a reception for them. They got married privately. And when we had the reception, she was almost apologetic. Here I am, 70 years old, starting all over again, but I feel like an excited, teenager. It's like, please don't apologize. I'm so happy for you. And I'm so happy for him. I mean, they both were such nice people. And sometimes you have to have some of those experiences so that then when the right thing comes along, you've got a wellspring of appreciation for what you have. Do not think of yourself as someone who's washed up, regardless of what the age may be. And I believe, of course, I'm older, but I believe that down to the core of my being. So hold on. Okay. Okay. This next question is going to be my gold star question for the week. This person says, why is it that narcissists seem to think that kind-hearted people deserve to be abused? They seem to think a kind person deserves their hatred and their exploitation and punishment for being a loving person. How do they justify their hatred for us and their own behaviors to unleash abuse and vengeance? Okay, that's a huge question. And we go back to our theme here. Narcissists only want to hear what they want to hear. A kind person and somebody that she's describing more or less is implying through their manner of life, hey, you know what? I'm not into that power broker stuff that you're in. That criticism and that harshness and that condescension that you buy off on, that's not my style. Now, you probably aren't even worried about saying it. You're just living it. And basically, your goodness and your kindness is exposing the bankruptcy of that narcissistic way of being. You may recall, I have in fact, this is one of my favorite videos. It's 4 or 5 months ago now. It's called A New Way of Defining Narcissism. And one of the ways that I like to define narcissism is the absence of love. You have the presence of control and entitlement and harshness, etc., superiority and haughtiness. But ultimately, all that says is this is someone who doesn't understand love. And so, if you are someone who's kind and loving, the narcissist is thinking, "No comprende. I don't know how to. I don't know how to deal with that." And it's not a commentary about you; it's a commentary about them. In a very backwards way, it's kind of a compliment in the sense that they say, "Well, I got to bring you in line." The implication is you're not in line with my values, and if you're that kind person, it's like they're doing this because of their own insecurity. They're doing this because they think that you win when you pound people into submission. And I'm thinking, stay with what you are. We need more people like this. And so they've bought into this notion that says power is strength. I buy in the notion, and I hope the rest of you do too, that says, well, love is strength. Would you go with me on that one? All right. Okay. Last one. Dr. C, my husband would say that he used to be a narcissist, but he isn't anymore. But he's taken me for a ride throughout our entire marriage. He still does everything that a narcissist would do. I thought that he understands narcissism and would work on it. If he acknowledges at some point in his life he was a narcissist, does it really mean that he's working on himself? And, pardon the way I put it, but when somebody says something like that, my BS meter goes off big time. It's like, he's messing with you. Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes I can be narcissistic, but it's almost as though they take it as a badge of distinction. Yeah, yeah, I'm a narcissist, and probably I need to change. Not really, and so they don't. And so in their brigado and all the rest, they may go along just because. Well, when you say, well, narcissism means you're highly controlling and super opinionated, and very selfish and condescending, and they think, yeah, I do that a lot. Okay, I probably need to change, but then they don't. It's the old adage, actions speak louder than words. When they say, yeah, I probably need to change, well, where's the action? And narcissists really only hear what they want to hear. That's it. And so if you bring them to the front door and say, let's go into this door and do it a whole different way, it's like, no, I'm afraid of what I'm going to hear in there, and that doesn't meet what I have found to be successful for me. Of course, their understanding of success is completely messed up. And so just because they say, and some of them might, but just because they say, yeah, I probably need to make some adjustments, doesn't mean it's going to happen. And so, in that being the case, rather than pleading your case with them, stand your ground and be who you are despite that. So we go with that theme. Narcissists hear only what they want to hear, and what we are saying is, it's not your job to make them understand what they don't want to understand. It is your job to live inside of your own decent character. And so let's close with that, and just know that that's what we stand for here on Team Healthy. Okay, now I am going to go back to my request that I made straight up. What have you learned about your healing, and what has helped you in your healing, so that you can be a person of goodness and love after coming away from an abusive situation with a narcissist? I want to get as many comments from you as I can. I already have a bunch that are there, and then I'm going to pick up on that. We're going to go into that space next week. Okay. Um, I cannot tell you, and I've had conversations with my wife this week about how honored I am here. I'm about to turn 68 years old, April, and I'm at the end of my counseling practice, but I'm not at the end of my influence. And I hope that I can have a voice and say, at this stage in my life, I'm not like that guru up on the top of the mountain. But at this stage of my life, I've been through enough personally, and I've heard enough from other individuals. It's like, I just have a compassion for those who are wanting to say, let's improve, let's deepen what we have to offer each other. And I'm way drawn to the theme of goodness and kindness. That's what I want to be known as. I want you to be known as. When I say Team Healthy, that's what I want us to be. And if we on this network can commit together that says, well, in my sphere of influence, that's what you're going to get from me, then Team Healthy means that we've accomplished something. So I really, first of all, appreciate you letting me be on the journey with you. And then second, I want you to join me on my journey. And we're going to do this together. And in spaces here and there, we can be difference makers. Okay. So I look forward to getting your comments. I'll see you next week. And I hope that you have a good rest of the week, wherever you happen to be. Thanks now. Bye.